So I'll call the meeting to order at 7 o'clock. Can we have a roll call, please?
Dustin Allred,
Present.
Will Andreessen,
Present.
Andrew Fell, Lou Hopkins, Deborah McFarland,
Present.
Karen Sims, Chen-Chi Yu.
Here.
Okay, so it looks like we have a quorum. Any changes to the agenda?
There are no changes to the agenda.
Approval of the minutes. So we have the minutes of the December 8th, 2022 regular meeting of the Plan Commission. Are there any motions or comments on the minutes from the last meeting? Anyone?
I do have a question. So in the last meeting, I repeatedly saying that it's going to be 100-unit build, but later on we understand it's 40. So how do you correct those kind of mistakes?
I think we included a note that staff later clarified that the current proposal is for 40 units. I believe that's what happened, but I have not looked at the minutes recently.
Thank you. I move that we approve the minute from last meeting.
Motion by Ms. Yu. Is there a second?
A second.
Second by Ms. McFarland. Any discussion of the minutes? Any changes? If not, did you have something? If not, we'll do a voice vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, that passes. Do we have any communications?
There were no communications.
This feels really echoey in here. Maybe this mic works better than I'm used to. Or is it just me?
Nope, you're good.
All right. We have no continued public hearings, no old business, which brings us to our new public hearings for this evening. We'll start with plan case number 2465 SU 22. This is a request by Scott Tess on behalf of the City of Urbana to allow the installation, operation, and maintenance of a solar energy system up to 25 acres in size and generally located near 1210 East University Avenue in the AG Agriculture and CRE Conservation, Recreation, Education zoning districts. Mr. Ricci?
Can you hear me okay? Okay. This is Scott Tess on behalf of the City of Urbana, requests a special use person permit to allow Total Energies Renewable USA to install, operate, and maintain a solar farm of up to 15 acres. That is a correction from the 25 acres that was listed in the staff report. The City of Urbana owns the closed landfill at 901 North Smith Road, which extends westward to the proposed site, which is generally located at 1210 East University Avenue. The city and Total Energies have entered into an agreement to give the company the option to lease all or part of the property to install, operate, and maintain a ground-mounted solar energy system at this site. A solar farm is permitted with a special use permit in the Ag and CRE zoning districts, which make up the site. We might be being joined by Chad Tatey from Total Energies via phone. Mr. Tess is here in person to answer questions. Staff does recommend that the Plan Commission forward the case to City Council with a recommendation of approval with one conditions. As I mentioned, we changed redevelop 25 acres to redevelop 15 acres, and there's a correction stating that there would be a 7-foot tall fence around the property, not 8 feet tall. The project site is located between East Perkins Road and Butso Drive, west of Interstate 74, and east of the Landfill Recycling Center Access Drive. It is on a portion of the closed municipal landfill complex, which operated from the 1920s until it was closed in 1988. Here you see the property with the two proposed arrays. We have Butso Drive here and Smith Road here. Interstate 74 is to the northeast. Perkins Road is to the north. The zoning of the property, this parcel is split zoned. It is CRE, which is Conservation, Recreation, Education on the northwest, and agricultural to the east and south. So the north array and a portion of the south array would be located in the CRE district, and the south half of the southern array is located in the ag district. Both of these districts allow a solar farm as a special use in those districts. In 2018, historically, Council approved a special use permit allowing the construction and operation of a 20-acre solar farm approximately 500 feet east of the proposed project site. And we'll give you a picture of that. Here you can see the north and south proposed arrays on the left, and you can see the completed solar farm that was constructed under that 2018 special use permit to the east, and there's Interstate 74. In addition, we have industrially zoned land to the south and more CRE and ag land to the north, and we also have some county-zoned parcels here to the southeast, as well as some city B3 zoned property to the south. The future land use designation of this property is heavy industrial, which matches with the landfill use that it is right now, and will probably continue to be in the future. The future land uses around it are light industrial to the south, park to the north, and light industrial to the east. Excuse me, this is all heavy industrial, not light industrial. Thank you. The current special use permit is to redevelop 15 acres. This area includes the total project site, which includes 2 solar arrays designed to produce a total of approximately 4.3 megawatts. The north array is 4.6 acres of that 15, located north of the landfill. Let's get that picture back up. North of the landfill access drive, which is this blue line here, with 1 inverter and transformers and approximately 2,500 solar panels. The south array is approximately 10 acres located south of the landfill access drive with 1 inverter and transformers and 5,000 solar panels. There will be a 7-foot tall perimeter chain link fence around each array with access gates around the panels and inverter cabinets. The arrays would be accessed from the existing LRC access drive. The city did pass a solar energy text amendment in 2022. The ordinance requires the following: the inverters shall be at least 150 feet from all property lines. This is designed to mitigate any noise that would be generated from those inverters. Requires compliance with state and local regulations, including the Urbana Code of Ordinances, which includes our nuisance code, which addresses noises. Requires compliance with setback and height requirements of the zoning districts that they will be in. Screening would not be required as the solar farm is more than 500 feet from the nearest residential use. That was also part of the newly passed solar ordinance. Staff do recommend that the north array be at least 80 feet from the center line of the Saline Branch drainage ditch, which is along the north property line here, in accordance with an unrecorded 160-foot total maintenance easement held by the Saline Drainage District. So that's 80 feet on either of the center line of the drainage ditch. Currently, I will show you what the site plan says. Here is the proposed site plan at this point that's been submitted. A close-up of it, you can't, let's see if we can zoom in. Yeah, we can. You can see here that it does show, that's as far as we can zoom in, the 160-foot saline drainage ditch easement shown right here. And then this is a notation showing an additional 10-foot buffer between the edge of that easement and the North Array's boundary. According to the zoning ordinance, an application shall demonstrate the following: that the proposed use is conducive to the public convenience at that location. In this case, similar to the nearby 20-acre solar farm, the proposed solar farm is conducive to the public convenience at this location in 3 ways: that it would redevelop 15 acres of a closed municipal landfill, which would otherwise have very little opportunity for reuse. The proposed project would be self-contained on the site. Construction would have a short-term impact on neighboring properties as materials are delivered, and operation should not affect neighboring properties. The project's proximity to the interstate would allow easy access for construction materials and labor and for maintenance. Secondly, the proposed solar farm would be designed, constructed, and operated and maintained similarly to the nearby solar farm and include characteristics to minimize unreasonably injurious or detrimental impacts to the public. That includes that aforementioned 7-foot tall perimeter security fence, that the inverters would be located at least 150 feet from all property lines, and existing trees and vegetation along much of the project perimeter would serve to mitigate any further noise. There are no occupied buildings or structures proposed. No new lighting is expected to be installed. Tenant will exercise reasonable diligence to not unreasonably block or hamper traffic. Site work is expected to occur during 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. And finally, the proposed solar farm would conform to the applicable regulations and standards of the agricultural and CRE districts and would not be out of character with those districts, especially given the proximity of the nearby 20-acre solar farm. So as an overview, the redevelopment of the subject property with the proposed solar farm would be beneficial to the city and meet the criteria for the special use permit approval. It would be an infill redevelopment of the closed City of Urbana landfill, a much higher and better use of the subject property than its current use as vacant land, and few potential opportunities for reuse. We did publish legal notice in the News Gazette. We sent letters to neighboring property owners, posted 2 public hearings on the site. We've received no inquiries or comments about the proposed permit. The findings are summarized in the staff report. We have some, this is an aerial of the property looking from the north, showing the 2 proposed arrays. At the top of the screen, you can see Flex and Gate there in the industrial park to the south of the property. You can also see the Saline Drainage District here. You can see the vegetation along the south line of that proposed south array that will help mitigate noise. Plan Commission has the following options in Plain Case 2465 SU 22: to recommend approval of the special use permit without any additional conditions, to recommend approval of the permit with any conditions deemed necessary, or to recommend denial of the special use permit. If the Plan Commission elects to do so, it should articulate the findings supporting its denial. Here is a photograph of the proposed site. The middle of it, you can again see Flex and Gate there. Staff recommends that the Plan Commission recommend approval of the proposed special use permit with the following condition, that the proposed construction and use must generally conform to the site plan submitted in this application, including a minimum 80-foot buffer to the center line of the Saline Branch Drainage District, except where modified to meet city regulation. That means if the city requires a wider buffer or any other buffers, that those would be added into the site plan. That is all for the presentation. Mr. Tess is here in person. I'm not sure if we have Mr. Tatey on the phone. I am willing to answer any questions.
Thanks, Mr. Ricci. Any questions for staff? Or Mr. Tess, I suppose, too. I have a couple questions. So the first project to install a solar array on the closed landfill was approved around 2018, something like that. Have there been any complaints or issues that have come up in terms of the operation of that in the intervening years?
I have not heard any complaints or received any forwarded complaints from Building Safety or from Public Works. I would also pass on to Mr. Tess to answer if he has received any, or if he knows of any.
Yeah, complaints or issues in terms of an impact on the landfill, I guess, using it in this way.
No.
Okay, good.
Be with you, by the way. Thank you.
Good, good. And then my other question was, is there a mapped floodplain for the ditch? And is this, I assume the buffer is just for access and maintenance and not necessarily for staying out of the floodplain. But I don't know if there is a floodplain mapped for this or not.
I do not know if there's a floodplain. That's a good question. Scott, do you know? I will
I think there is.
double check that. If there is a floodplain associated with the area, they would have to comply with the city's floodplain development ordinance. The easement there is for the Saline Drainage District Commission to access the ditch for their maintenance of the ditch.
The landfill area is actually quite elevated because it has been filled.
Right. Yeah, okay. Yeah, I wasn't familiar with the topography there, but I assumed something like that was the
You
case.
can see a long ways from the top of the landfill.
Okay. And then my last question, in the staff's recommendation, the condition, it says, you know, to include the 80-foot, minimum 80-foot buffer, except where modified to meet city regulation. What is that? Can you explain that?
That is simply a caveat to allow if some other agency in the city requires a wider buffer, then we don't have to come back and say, we want you to change your condition from 80 feet to 100 feet.
Okay. Thanks. Any other questions? All right, at this point, we'll open it up to the public hearing portion. If there's anyone in the audience tonight that wishes to address the commission about this plan case, you can come forward. All right, seeing as we have no one in the audience that wants to address the commission, we'll declare the public input portion for this case closed and go into discussion and possibly entertain motions to vote. So, is there any discussion of the proposal? Are we ready to make a motion?
Let me give it a try.
Here too, if you want.
I move that we send the plan case number 2465-SU-22 to the City Council with the recommendation of approval with the conditions that outlined in the staff report.
So we have a motion by Ms. Yu. Any second?
I'll second.
Second by Ms. McFarland. Any further discussion? Could we have a roll call, please?
Will Andreessen,
Yes.
Deborah McFarland,
Yes.
Chen-Shi Yu,
Yes.
and Dustin Allred.
Yes. So that motion passes. Do we have a date for council on that one?
Yes, it will be going to council on it will be going to Committee of the Whole on January 17th of this year because it is a special use permit with new construction. And then it will go to City Council after that.
All right. Okay, moving on to our next case. Plan case number 2466M22, a request by Nabil Masai to rezone 1009 Cunningham Avenue from R3 Single and Two Family Residential to B3 General Business. Mr. Ricci, pass it over to you again.
We may be joined by the applicant. Okay. Nabil Masai requests to rezone 1009 Cunningham Avenue from R3 Single and Two Family Residential to B3 General Business. He would like to start a catering service at that site, and that is not allowed in the R3 district, but is permitted by right in the B3 zoning district. The request does align with the comprehensive plan, and it adequately satisfies the rezoning criteria. Therefore, staff recommends approval of the rezoning request. The site is located on the west side of Cunningham Avenue here, north of Kerr Avenue and south of Oakland Avenue. The property is zoned R3, single and two-family residential. There had been a duplex on the property that was built around 1973. It became vacant and then was demolished in 2021. That's why we have this artifact of the R3 zoning there. There is B3 General Business to the north and south and all along Cunningham on the east side. The requested rezoning would allow the applicant to develop the vacant lot and run a catering business at this location. The requested rezoning would bring this property into conformity with the surrounding area, as well as the comprehensive plan, which identifies the future land use for the property as community business. That's this pink shade here that runs along the the east and west sides of Cunningham Avenue. To the north, you have Cunningham Children's Home Institutional, and to the south, you have Institutional East Lawn Burial Park. Further west, you have residential, and further east, you have multifamily. The comprehensive plan also identifies Cunningham Avenue as a corridor for commercial growth, end quote, designed to serve the surrounding residential neighborhoods as well as the community as a whole. The requested rezoning would allow for the commercial redevelopment of a vacant property in the Cunningham Avenue Corridor Redevelopment Plan TIF district, which is the Tax Increment Financing District, and also in the Champaign County Enterprise Zone. If the property is rezoned, a 10-foot buffer yard would apply to the rear yard to the west, as well as a landscape buffer with a minimum depth of 5 feet on that same side. This is to buffer it from the existing residential district and uses that are to the west of the property. Okay, so we have, this is the no longer there duplex. This is an historic aerial. And this is what it looks like now, that lot. This is looking at the lot from the west. You have Cunningham Avenue along the north. You have the CU Auto to the north of the lot. And you have a car repair facility. I believe it's Kong Hee to the south, and I believe this is McAllister's Audio to the south, and Now and Zen, resale shop. And then all along the west side of the property are single-family and/or duplex homes. Summarizing the LaSalle and Sinclair criteria that the city must adhere to for evaluating requests to amend the zoning designation. First, regarding the existing land uses and zoning of nearby property, the proposed rezoning to B3 is compatible with the existing land uses and zoning of the immediate area. The current R3 zoning is not conducive to the future redevelopment of the site, and the proposed B3 zoning would allow for future commercial development in line with the zoning and land uses in the surrounding area. Second criteria is regarding the diminishment of property values due to the current zoning. The R3 zoning district restricts the permitted uses for the property to only residential and some public uses. The proposed B3 zoning district allows for commercial uses consistent throughout the Cunningham Avenue corridor, and without the rezoning, the property would likely remain vacant. Third, regarding the extent to which the ordinance promotes the health, safety, morals, or general welfare of the public, the proposed rezoning could have a positive effect on the general welfare of the public, as it would allow for the redevelopment of a currently vacant property. Fourth, regarding the relative gain to the public as compared to the hardship imposed on the property owner. Both the public and the property owner would benefit from the proposed rezoning. The public would likely see no gain if the property remains zoned R3. For the property owner, the restrictions of the R3 zoning district impose a hardship, as the vacant land could only be developed for small-scale residential or public uses. Fifth, regarding the suitability of the subject property for the zoned purposes. The property is suitable for B3 zoning and commercial uses, as the property is located in the Cunningham Avenue corridor, which is characterized by commercial uses. Sixth, regarding the length of time the property has been vacant as zoned. The property has been vacant for 1 year, which was before the applicants purchased the property. Seventh, regarding the community's need for more of the proposed use. It is unclear if there is a need for more of the types of uses that would be allowed if the zoning is granted, whether that's catering service or any other B3 general business use. However, the proposed zoning would allow for commercial uses in general, which better aligns with the zoning and land uses in the surrounding area. Lastly, the care with which the community has planned its land use development. In the comprehensive plan, the properties are identified as part of the community business future land use designation. The proposed rezoning to B3 would comply with the description of community business centers. The findings are summarized in the staff report. Staff did publish a legal ad in the News Gazette to notify the public, and also sent letters to 34 neighboring property owners. Staff did not receive any public input regarding the requested special use permit. The Plan Commission has the following options. Let's see, we have some more photographs of the property. This is looking into the property from Cunningham Avenue, looking north along the sidewalk towards the CU Auto, looking south towards the Now and Zen and McAllister Audio. Plan Commission has the following options in this case: to forward the case to City Council with a recommendation to approve, forward the case to City Council with a recommendation of denial of the rezoning request. Staff recommends that the Plan Commission recommend approval of the zoning map amendment in Plan Case 2466 for the reasons we articulated above. I believe we might have Mr. Masai on the phone. I'm also willing to answer any questions you might have.
Thanks, Mr. Ricci. Any questions for staff? You?
I may not got it from your report, I might missed it, but what was the historical reason that this parcel end up to be R3 instead of B3? Because it just seems to be weird. It's such clear all 3 use, no
Well,
B3 use.
it's fairly common for when property gets zoned, it will often reflect the existing land use at the site, which was a duplex, rather than zoning it in accordance with the comprehensive plan, which if it had been zoned B3, that would have made the duplex legally non-conforming use, which would have made it impossible to do anything but the smallest repairs to the property. It would not be allowed to be replaced if it was damaged beyond 60%, could not be altered. So rather than burdening a property owner with the restrictions of not being able to repair or expand your home, the city presumably zoned it R3 to reflect the existing use.
So duplex is not allowed in a B3.
I believe it is not. Let me double check. B3 does not permit single or two-family homes as a permitted use. It allows multifamily residential as a special use and does not, and allows assisted living and nursing homes as conditional uses. So single and two-family homes are not permitted at all in a B3 district.
Thanks. Following up on that, when was this zoning code applied? Because I remember you said something about this duplex was constructed in the 70s.
I'm not sure when it was zoned R3.
It's okay.
Okay.
Thanks.
Any other questions for staff? Does the petitioner want to address the commission, or do we have the petitioner?
Mr. Messiah, are you on the phone? I do not think we have Mr. Messiah on the phone.
Okay. All right, seeing as there are no more questions for staff, we'll open it up to the public again. If there's anyone in the audience that wishes to address the commission about this case, either in favor or opposed, you can come forward. All right, seeing as there's no one who wants to address the commission, we'll declare the public input portion for this case closed and go into discussion and entertain motions to vote. Is there any discussion on the proposal? Are we ready to make a motion?
I'm going to do it. I move that we send plan case number 2466-M-22 to City Council with the recommendation of approval.
Motion by Ms. Yu, second.
Second.
We have a second by Mr. Andreessen. Any further discussion? I'll just say this seems to make sense in terms of the way that the existing comprehensive plans, future land use treats this area and the fact that this is a commercial corridor. So can we have a roll call, please?
Deborah McFarland,
Yes.
Chen-Chi Yu,
Yes.
Dustin Allred,
Yes.
and Will Andreessen.
Yes.
So that motion passes. Do we have a date for council for this one?
Yes, we do. This will go to City Council on the 23rd, January 23rd.
All right, that brings us to new business, which is CZ ZBA 058 AT22. This is a request by the Champaign County Zoning Administrator to amend the Champaign County zoning ordinance to allow expanded materials management and other waste-related uses in the AG1, AG2, B1, B4, B5, I1, and/or I2 county zoning districts. Mr. Ricci.
Thank you. I will say right up front that this is a complex case. It isn't just one use, it's a lot of uses, a lot of different districts. Champaign County Department of Planning and Zoning Planner Susan Bergstrom is here tonight in person, so she can answer any questions. And again, this is an interpretation by a city staff member of a county zoning amendment, so we'll go with there. I'm not going to read the entire memo to you. I will hit the high points. So in this zoning amendment, overall, 3 new uses would be added, 3 existing uses would be revised, and 1 existing use would be revised and then removed. 2 uses would have specific conditions added, and 1 would be prohibited as a rural home occupation. These various uses would be permitted by right and/or permitted with an administrative special use permit in these zoning districts. And an administrative special use permit is one that staff administers according to criteria. I believe it goes to ZBA, to the County Zoning Board of Appeals as well. The proposed text amendment is of interest to the city because it may affect zoning and land development decisions within the city's extraterritorial jurisdiction, which is that 1.5 mile outside the city limits, which through annexation will sometimes eventually become city property. So we're trying to proactively help the county plan things that may become something that the city has to deal with in the future. And so the city, under state law, can protest a proposed amendment by the county. What this means is that if the city protests it, the county would require a 3/4 majority of their county board to approve the zoning amendment. Just because the city protests doesn't mean that it can't happen. It just means it sets a higher bar for the county to pass it. So, staff recommends no protest of the proposed text amendment because the amendment would add appropriate uses to certain zoning districts with reasonable, specific conditions to minimize the potential for incompatible land uses that could adversely affect Urbana. The proposed amendment would still allow the city to plan and manage development through the county's special use permit review process for those uses that do require a special use permit. Why the reason for this amendment? The Champaign County Department of Planning and Zoning did have an applicant express interest in establishing a facility that would collect large quantities of used glass inside a storage building to then be transferred later to another location for processing. That type of use is not in the county's zoning ordinance at this time. The staff report lays out the timeline at which the county has taken this to its Zoning Board of Appeals and to its Environmental Land Use Committee. The second ELUC meeting, because it has to go to 2 meetings, in between there's a public comment period. That second comment period is happening tonight. And then at tonight's ELUC meeting, they may make a recommendation to the county board to pass the amendment or not. The case is scheduled to be heard at the January 19th county board meeting. The staff report goes through the preliminary memo that the county zoning administrator sent out. My staff report goes through the terms and definitions that would be added, those that would be modified, uses that would be removed. It goes through the specific conditions that would be added. One question that came up even within staff is, so say for the sanitary landfill and refuse dump uses that the county has right now, that they propose to rename pollution control facilities. Why are they bothering to rename it and then remove it? Well, the renaming of it is to bring it in line with how the Illinois EPA defines them. And then the Illinois EPA, by state law, can regulate those uses, taking it out of the authority of the county to have to deal with them. So basically, the county is renaming the old refuse dump use to the new industry standard name, and then say, Illinois EPA, you are now going to regulate it. The other reason for that is through this process, it allows the county to set up a location siting and review process so that they can still comment on where they want these uses to be located while still turning over the regulation of them to the state. Complicated, but that's why they're modifying and then removing the use. And Susan can answer more questions about that if you've got it. Okay, the staff report has some handy tables in it. Table 1 on page 4 compares the current land uses and the proposed land uses, helps you walk between the renamings and what's a new use, what's a modified use, what the deleted uses are. Table 2 looks at those uses and then summarizes in tabular form what zoning districts they're going to be allowed in and how they're going to be permitted. Junkyards are currently permitted in the I-2 heavy industrial district, and the only thing that's happening here is a name change for that. Recycling centers with no outdoor operations are permitted in 4 different districts. The purpose of it in the zoning amendment was to add in a new recycling center with outdoor storage operations. Those facilities are going to be permitted in the 2 industrial districts and allowed with a special use permit in the higher intensity business districts. For those that might show up in those business districts as a special use, the city would be notified of those and could provide comments to the county on them when those special use permits are requested by an applicant. Construction and demolition debris recycling centers would be allowed as a special use in the county's industrial districts. The city would be notified and could comment. Landscape waste compost facility was an existing named use. It has some specific conditions applied to it to regulate its use. A new use is landscape waste processing facility that would be allowed as a special use in the same districts as the compost facility is currently allowed in. That's the industrial districts, both of them, and in the Ag 2 heavier intensity agricultural districts. The permanent compostable waste collection point would be allowed as a special use in the Ag 2 and the B1, 4, 5 districts and the 2 industrial districts. And finally, the specific material collection site would be allowed as a special use in the 2 Ag districts and the 3 business districts and the 2 industrial districts. The specific material collection site is the inquired about use that would allow that recycled glass to be collected as a specific material at a specified site. You'll notice with the double asterisks that that proposed use would only be authorized on property where there is also a government facility. So that really narrows down where that would happen. I believe the proposed use was to be located at a township garage. We go into the proposed amendments benefit to the county, which is basically it would allow them to increase the number of uses that are allowed in appropriate districts and to better Yes, thank you. Thank you. I think I turned it off. Thank you. And it's inconsistent with none of the county's zoning ordinance purposes. So overall, it helps achieve the county's zoning ordinance's purposes. County zoning. Moving into county zoning, we discuss the intent of the county's zoning districts. Those zoning description sheets are provided as an exhibit. As far as city zoning, staff reviewed the proposed text amendment to identify potential land use conflicts within the city and its ETJ and for potential impacts to the city's ability to plan or manage development. Overall, we found that the amendment would minimize land use incompatibilities and would still allow the city to plan and management develop through the county's special use permit review process. So I'm going to move into the mapping exercise that we did. As you look through the discussion, we go through each of these proposed uses and discuss where the county would allow it and where the city would allow it, and if there are any potential incompatibilities, and talking about how the special use permit would help mitigate that. So, first looking at the proposed junkyard districts, which would be in the county I-1 and I-2 zoning districts. The city of Urbana allows junkyards or automobile salvage areas in the hatched purple areas, which are our industrial districts. Heavy industrial districts only, not light industrial. And the county currently allows them as a special use in the green zone. So you see that these are right next to each other for the most part in the north end of town. We do have some existing county zoned property within, the matrix of the city here. And this is Max Recycling, an existing auto salvage yard in this green dot. This is the Dart Solo complex, which is zoned IN2, and this is the Guardian Flexingate IN2 zoned property, and this is another city zoned property. So by and large, these industrial districts would be concentrated in the north end of the county or in this corridor along East Main Street that's already industrial. Moving higher up, the proposed recycling center with outdoor operations, the new use. This adds in the I-1 light industrial districts in the city. Again, the same color scheme. Hatched purple is where it would be allowed in the city with special use permits. And in the county, would be permitted by right in the solid green or permitted with a special use permit in the hatched green. So similar to the city's hatched is special use, the county green is hatched and is special use. So along the Cunningham Avenue corridor, out in the city's ETJ is zoned County B4. Recycling centers with outdoor operations would be allowed along the corridor with a county special use permit. The city would still be notified of a requested special use permit and could comment on it. And again, adding in the IN1 in the city adds in these other currently zoned IN1 districts in the city. Moving into the proposed construction and demolition debris recycling center districts, I1 and I2. This looks to be like a mixture, a halfway point between the junkyards and the recycling centers in that there's no business districts. It's simply light industrial and heavy industrial. You see the hatched purple is city-zoned property, and the hatched green is county-zoned property. Both of them would require special use permits, not permitted by right anywhere. So there's quite a bit more regulation there. Moving into the proposed landscape waste composting facility districts, we now add in Ag 2 county districts, which expands the area that we're looking at to pretty much the entire city's ETJ. The vast majority of county land in the city's ETJ is zoned Ag 2. Landscape waste composting facilities would be allowed as a special use in the Ag 2 and the I1 and I2 districts. Although a landscape waste composting facility could come in next to residentially zoned and used properties in the city, as a special use, it would get commented on by the city if the city chose to comment on it. I will mention that the city's own landscape waste facility is located on the closed landfill, which is adjacent to industrial and residentially zoned properties. So it's not necessarily a bad neighbor by default. Moving into the proposed permanent compostable waste collection point districts. This adds in the B1, B4, and B5 county-zoned properties. Again, all of these zoning districts are by special use permit only, meaning the city would be able to provide comments on any of them. It's only a comparable facility in the city would be treated as a recycling facility, similar to probably how we're treating our current landscape waste composting facility. And finally, the proposed specific material collection site district, we add in the county Ag 1 districts, which there are a couple, you see these edge properties here, these are zoned Ag 1. So when you get into the next use, you add in those few zonings. Again, only allowed with a special use permit by the county. The city would be notified and could provide comments on them. Again, this use would be, if it came into and was proposed to by somebody in the city, we would treat it as the most similar use of us as a recycling center. And so, that takes us through the staff report. Moving into implications for development within the city's ETJ, the proposed amendment would still allow the city to plan and manage development within its municipal boundaries. Staff finds that the proposed amendment would minimize land use incompatibilities through the county's special use permit review process. We, by state law, have the ability to review these zoning decisions within the ETJ for consistency with the city's comprehensive plan. We reviewed that, found goals 16, 17, and 21 that were relevant, and found that the proposed amendment was consistent with those three goals of those three objectives. The staff findings are summarized in the staff report. The Plan Commission has the following options in this case: to forward the plan case to City Council with a recommendation to protest the proposed amendment, or forward the plan case to City Council with a recommendation to protest the proposed amendment contingent upon specific provisions to be identified. So if you want to put conditions on not protesting it, or to forward the plan case to City Council with a recommendation not to protest the proposed amendment. Staff recommends that the Plan Commission recommend forwarding the case to City Council with a recommendation not to protest the proposed amendment. I'm happy to answer questions, and Ms. Bergstrom is here to answer questions as well.
Thanks, Mr. Ricci, for trying to make sense of that. It is a complex one. Any questions for staff or for the county's representative here? Can you go back to anyone, the previous map is fine. So just to be clear for people who may be watching this, so the county, for a lot of what we've seen tonight, the county currently allows these uses by special use permit in these zones that might seem problematic to people when they look at it and see that they could have these things next to residential areas. But
No.
it's, okay, I thought it was just a name change or creating
No.
more categories or,
Right, so I'll bring up that table.
okay.
Oh, that's not good. So this is probably, this should answer your question. Items that aren't bolded and underlined are existing uses in the zoning ordinance. So junkyards are already permitted in those districts. Recycling centers with no outdoor storage are allowed. But recycling center with outdoor storage is not currently a permitted use. Construction and demolition debris recycling is not a permitted use. Landscape waste compost facility is, but a processing facility is not. Permanent compostable waste collection points and specific material collection sites are not permitted. I am not sure if the county has the authority like the city does, where somebody can say, I want to do a thing, and if that use isn't in the table of uses, the city zoning administrator can say, well, this is a similar use, we'll treat it as that. If the county doesn't have that, then their hands are really tied, and they need to get an amendment to even allow anything that doesn't fit tightly into those categories. But Ms. Bergstrom can respond to that better.
Okay, yeah, that's how I interpreted it, is there's a certain amount of disaggregation of existing categories to create new categories that are somewhat similar to the original category.
So this other table, currently the use is called recycling of non-hazardous materials, but all storage and processing indoors, which means still no outdoor recycling center. Landscape waste processing facility would be split into landscape waste processing facility and landscape waste composting facility. So they might be considering composting as being part of processing now. I think there are some new specific conditions, though, that are applied to the new composting facility use. Those three uses, the compostable waste, the specific material collection, and the construction demolition debris, those are completely new uses. So yes, two uses are being kind of split out into other things. Those were the revised uses.
And just to be clear, if someone were to apply for a special use permit for a landscape waste composting facility near one of the subdivisions on the south end of town, then that would also come to Plan Commission and the city through the same procedure with the chance to protest?
So, no.
No.
No, close, but not quite. County staff would notify city staff. City staff would notify, city administration. The commenting process, we don't do it very often. We don't get a lot of special use permits in the ETJ. When they do happen, we're notified about them. We don't necessarily say that those comments come to Plan Commission or come to City Council. We don't have a real specific protocol on how to deal with those comments. The county would accept an email or a letter from city staff saying the city does not object to that. I would imagine that if there was something that concerned city staff, that when city staff would funnel those proposed special use permits up the chain of command, that the city administrator or the mayor would say, let's bring this to Plan Commission or bring it to City Council. There isn't anything in the zoning ordinance that says comments for requested special use permits in the county are rendered a recommendation by Plan Commission. Unlike the zoning amendments and the text amendments are regulated to say they come to Plan Commission and go to City Council.
Okay, thanks for the clarification.
Absolutely.
Any other questions for staff? All right. Well, seeing as we don't have anyone in the audience who is not involved with the case, I'm going to assume that there is no one that wants to provide any comment, in which case we'll go into discussion and entertain a motion to vote. So is there any discussion on the proposal? Or are we ready to make a motion?
I move that we send the case CZZBA-058-AT-22 to City Council with the recommendation of not protest.
We have a motion by Ms. Yu. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. McFarland. Any further discussion? All right, can we have a roll call, please?
Chen-Shi Yu,
Yes.
Dustin Allred,
Yes.
Will Andreessen,
Yes.
and Deborah McFarland.
Yes.
So that motion passes. Do we have a date for council for that one?
That will actually be going to Committee of the Whole on the 17th so that they can get some comments before it goes to their county board on the 23rd.
All right.
And then it will go to City Council the following week for an actual vote.
Okay.
But at least this will get them some comments.
So an actual vote on the 23rd then?
Yes.
Okay. All right, that brings us to our audience participation. I'm going to assume that we don't have anyone in the audience who wishes to address the Plan Commission this evening. So we'll move on to staff report. Do we have a staff report?
There's no staff report.
Do we have a study session?
Do not have a study session.
And that would mean that we are adjourned.
At 8:04 p.m. Thank you very much.
Thanks.